Can good be cured? Nowadays, along with the development of modern medicine, many dangerous diseases have been extinguished, and dozens of deadly diseases have been studied by scientists from around the world in order to find treatments. However, gut, one of the world's earliest known diseases, along with the crucial pain that it causes for patients that have always exceeded many other diseases, has not been classified as one of the most dangerous diseases that should be focused on termination. Hippocrates, the father of modern medicine in the 4th century BC, discovered gut and called it the disease of kings. He also based on the level of its intensive pain to call it the king of diseases. Pain, unimaginable pain. Only a slight touch could cause the brain to ache tremendously. Only patients who have experienced gut like Mr. Tha, Mr. Kung, are able to fully understand the excruciating pain caused by gut. Since the time of Hippocrates, more than 2,600 years have passed. However, what we know about gut is still very limited. Moreover, the dire consequences of gut to the human body are even much less mentioned. Not many diseases can devastate the human body more fiercely than gut. Look at these edema fluid retention phases. They are results of the long-term abuse of drugs that contain corticoid. Hands and feet can be deformed, toothy lumps can burst and cause extensive infection and even lead to joint removal. Those are only the apparent consequences that haven't fully reflected the destructive effects it has on a patient's organs. Nearly 200 years have passed since the discovery of colchicine in poisonous garlic against gouty arthritis was known to the world. There has not been any study or breakthrough on gut. The gut treatments traditionally focused on treating inflammation, pain, increased or decreased excretion of uric acid synthesis. Pegloticase, a new treatment of gut licensed by the US FDA, circulated in 2010, was a beacon of hope for patients with gut, but it is only effective to lower blood uric acid and only described it limitedly. When the world is still struggling to terminate gut, medical facilities specialized in treating gut have yet been formed. The gut patients have no choice but to continue searching ways to self-treating. I had traveled all the way to Hanoi and even gone to the Traditional Medicine Institute. I bought dozens kinds of medicine and carried a sack filled with medicine on my shoulder back home in hope for curing gut, but the pain is still coming back. Goodness, there's not a single hospital in this city that I haven't been to. I have struggled with this disease ever since 2005, as mentioned in my file. I've gone through this entire Ho Chi Minh City in search of the right treatment. I'm very worried. I have gone to a lot of hospitals, both domestic and foreign. I have sent paperwork to France and the United States for specialists to have a look, but they only advise to drink a Western medicine with colchicine as an essential component. Self-treatment is associated with the patient going into a vicious circle and also causing the disease to worsen. The current status of gut patients that we've seen is far more varied and complex than the treatments they are usually received. It really is a challenge even for the modern medicine. It hurt every 3 months, then once a month, and eventually once a week. I finally fell into despair and do not know what to do. I told my children not to worry anymore because my situation was incurable. The pain only got worse and worse. The desire to conquer nature, defeating diseases, is the ultimate desire of mankind. For the community of patients with gut, though more than 2,600 years have passed, they will not be forgotten. On the 26th of July 2007, the Gut Institute was established, and now the day has become a special day for patients with Gut, not only in Vietnam but also in the world. It is not the developed countries that possess powerful science techniques like the United Kingdom, or France, or United States, or Russia, or Japan that is the pioneer in the study and treatment of Gut. But right here in the country of Vietnam, home to the fairy tales of Phu Dong Thiên Vương, stretching from an infant into a strong man going to fight against the enemy, there is indeed a fairy tale in life. With only 4 years since its founding, the Institute of Gut has resolved thousands of years' knots of the Gut disease history. We have focused on researching and discovered that the treatments for Gut are rather sketchy and only focus on anti-inflammatory, analgesic, increases excretion of uric acid, and the controlled diet to limit the recurrent acute Gut attacks. With these treatments, we can only temporarily resolve the symptoms of acute gouty waves and some steps in the mechanism of pathogenesis, which ignores many important factors to be addressed for the treatment of Gut. After taking reference from research around the world, we've created a schema pathogenesis of Gut. Based on this schema, we no longer treat Gut by the normal way, but with the comprehensive treatment for Gut and other diseases together. With what the Institute of Gut has achieved, on the 8th of January 2011, at the scientific seminar Together to Defeat Gut, organized by the Institute of Gut, for the first time in the history of Gut, the desire to conquer the disease has become the common voice of many Vietnamese scientists in the fields of medicine, pharmacy, and many other social sciences. In this seminar, many scientists were really surprised and touched by the miraculous results of treatment in Ho Chi Minh City Institute of Gut for the patients, especially the ones with chronic Gut have complications to many other serious diseases that seem that never be able to survive. Mr. Nguyễn Văn Minh, 56, is a chronic Gut patient with grade 3 renal malfunction. His toffee lumps has emerged in the legs and arms. Before, he didn't want to go anywhere. He would have to sit on a wheelchair and get pushed because he couldn't move his foot joints. The joints of his fingers, too, had been damaged. Gut has declined the quality of his life severely. His job of repairing clocks to support the whole family that needs skillful and flexible hands was no longer possible. After an aggressive treatment at the Institute of Gut, the strict compliance with the instructions of the physicians, the toffee lumps in his toes were gone. He was able to walk normally, and his hands can now execute daily work, and so far he has fully recovered. Before, even walking was painful. And about 2 years later, the middle toe swelled to the size of the big toe. Then a whitish substance came out, so I kept squeezing it out. I went to the Dong Nai hospital to have a surgery. But about 2 months after the surgery, the substance kept coming back and the wound couldn't heal. Then I went to the Institute of Gut and took his medicine. About 3 months after the phenomenon of uric acid drops, the surgical wound started to heal. Having finished all the medicine, I came back for a checkup, and a blood test proved that the acid uric has gone down. Now, only my problem is kidney disease with liver failure and elevated liver enzymes. I took the medicine for 1 more month and I completely recovered. Now I can walk for a few kilometers without any problems. Trần Thị Thế, one of the few female patients with chronic Gut, had many toffee lumps with rheumatoid arthritis and fingers began to deform. When arrived at the Institute of Gut, the patient was in critical condition with kidney failure causing swelling and water retention due to a long-time abuse of corticoid. After 2 months of treatment, the patient passed the dangerous period and after 6 months of treatment, the patients recovered, and the fingers were back to normal. I had taken the medicine for a month, and I could see that the hand was getting better. Oh God, I was so happy. My fingers were deformed like this. I couldn't turn or move them, and I couldn't even eat properly. Now they were much better. It only takes me 9 minutes to get here from the bus station instead of half an hour like before. Look at this man. No one would have thought that 2 months ago he was a pessimist good patient, desperate because of his severe condition. Lê Hồng Đảng was a special patient who has struggled with Gut for 26 years. When coming to the Institute of Gut, the patient was in a state of prolonged motionless. The toughy lumps on the body were as thick as gravel, even in the armpits, groins, and thighs. The leg and arm joints were destroyed. Hands, feet, elbows were deformed completely. Several toes were sore. Patient was in a state of renal failure, edema, and water retention, had difficulties in both the bowel and urination. Constant chronic aches, a lasting high fever, and vomiting after eating lead to complete exhaustion. After nearly 3 months of treatment, Mr. Đảng had a miraculous recovery. The water retention, edema, and fever were terminated, skin was improved, pain was reduced, and defecation and urination were no longer a problem. He can eat 2 to 3 bowls of rice, sleep for 6 to 7 hours a day, and some toffee lumps are beginning to burst. Even in war, injuries of the brain was not this painful. It was very painful that I couldn't sleep at night. I could only cry and feel depressed. Then after coming to the hospital, my lumps started to burst out and the substance flows out like milk. The more they break out, the better I feel. I couldn't even toss or move my body. Then, a month ago, the whole lumps broke out and I was so relieved. On the 12th of July, for the first time in a long period of paralysis due to the joint deformities and osteoarthritis, Đảng started to walk again.
Siêu nhà tâm hồn này. Vâng.
Lê Hồng Đảng is a war invalid type 2/4 in the Battle of Phú Hà Đông Nam Thi in Củ Chi. On the 17th of May on 1968, he was severely injured with a piece of artillery still remaining in the head and 2 bullet fragments through the lungs, and several other bullet fragments in the legs, arms. The wounds took away 65% of his health. The man had to sacrifice his flesh and blood in a war to liberate the South, and now he is fighting against the Gut disease and other wicked complications. In the fight against diseases today, he is no longer alone and desperate. The professors and doctors of the Institute of Gut have been helping him back to health, to regain a confidence in life. Mr. Minh, Mrs. Thế, Mr. Đảng are just a few typical patients of the hundreds of good patients that have severe complications of more than 10,000 patients have been being treated by the Institute of Gut. The amazing and miraculous recovery of patients with Gut in particular does not only bring joy and happiness to the patients themselves and their families, but also to the community of Gut patients, especially those living in pessimistic despair. The achievements of the Institute of Gut today are the successor, the innovative use of ideas of the South medicine for South people by the father of the Vietnamese medicine and the great physician Tieng, had raised it to a new height as a South medicine for the human. When the treatment of Gut Institute is widely used around the world, international friends will witness the special value of the herbal and medicinal sources of Vietnam. However, no success comes easily, especially with a disease that has created deadlock on the world for thousands of years like Gut. Rising above all these difficulties by means of scientific work, With the dedication and responsibility of the physicians of Vietnam, the Institute of Gut has been winning the trust of good patients. My family and I put all our faith in this good institute because I have survived. There are still a lot of challenges ahead, but the true path that the Institute of Gut is heading is now being received extensively from the scientific world, the media, and tomorrow from the entire community. Looking back, these 4 years' time is truly a sweet start to a bright future that will end the misery of thousands of good patients in Vietnam and in the world.